Hey everybody, you're very welcome to In Forest and Lands. I'm Joe Price, wilderness skills instructor, and behind our brand new camera is Ida Olsen.
Hello everyone.
And we're here in the beautiful part of our woodland to make a video that's been very much requested by people all over the world. I'm calling it the 10 do's and 101 don'ts of knife safety in a tribute to the people who've reached out and asked me to create this. I've been reached out to by many scout organisations from Norway, Sweden, Finland, Ireland and the UK to just make a nice reference video and to also share my lesson. That's one thing that me and Ida like to do on this channel, is when you watch my videos, that is exactly who you see in the woods, and that is the lesson you are going to get. They are not clickbait. They are not just made up for YouTube. They are what I teach in the woods. So even though this is a very basic video, if you're an old hat at using knives in the woods, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some tips and tricks that you can pick up in this video to help you out and about. But also, it's always good to check your confidence meter. One of the things in the woods is you can have a lot of time and experience. I myself am guilty of this. Ada kind of is too. Of getting a bit too cocky and a bit too confident, and that's when accidents happen just as much as nervousness. And what also inspired me to make this video is that myself and Ida have traveled a hell of a lot over the past couple of years and demonstrated knives at various shows, most recently in Norway at Camp Villmark, where we had nearly 100 people come into the booth, into the outdoor classroom and try some knives. And I noticed that an awful lot of people, both young and old, could maybe use a bit of a refresher. So if you're here for a refresher, join along. So we'll dive straight into it. Now, to first understand the beast, you gotta know its name. And when I sit down with people to teach knives, I don't like to dive straight into knives because there's a lot of steps you can take before you do. Everybody starts off their knife lesson saying that the knife was the first tool that man ever came upon and stuff like that, which is very true in the literal sense. But I also believe, like all other great bushcraft instructors out there that I myself personally look up to, that these were the first tools that mankind was gifted with, your hands. You can break a knife and you can break a compass and sure, you'll be in trouble, but if you damage your hands, then you're in big trouble. But also, your tool can damage your hands as well, and that's why it's so important to understand these safety techniques. And you're not going to damage your hands by using your tools if you don't use your tools. In fact, I always look for that when I'm out and about at courses, working with other instructors, festivals, events all over the world. One of the first things I watch for in a person who calls themselves a knife pro is how much they use their actual knife. You shouldn't have to use your knife practically at all if you kind of know what you're up to, except for the fine bits that you need your knife for. So first of all, you got to protect your hands, but you also got to find the right stick. When people go out to the woods, an awful lot of knife problems start at the very basic level by choosing the wrong pieces of wood. You're always looking for wood that's thumb thick. Now this is basic wood. We're not talking spoon carving or spatula making. We're talking tent stakes, feather sticks, and those bits and bobs that you just need for woodcraft around the camp. So finding a big stick is kind of where you want to be. This would kind of be the smallest stick that I would try and find to use wood on. What has this got to do with knife safety, Joe? Well, when you're carving, say I want to make this my tent stake, what I would do is I would move the circumference up into the middle of the tent, or up into the middle of the stick, my apologies, and then I have two handles on either end to work with my knife. So finding a good stick is so important, but it's very hard to find a branchless stick. I do understand that most of the sticks in the woods will end up looking like this, and this is where our original tools come into play. We have used our thumb to find the stick we want, maybe our arm's length, so we can carve multiple projects. I can make a whole camping store of tent stakes out of this if I want to, or some beautiful feather sticks. But then we want to remove the branches. Now we're going to be focusing on fixed blades in this particular talk, big fixed blades and small fixed blades. But the first thing that everybody decides to do is just start delimming, whacking, moving, putting it down, chopping away. And I totally understand that. It's a knife, that's what you want to do. But you can use the original tools, save your knife, keep it in the pocket, take the risk about damaging your hands by just understanding how grain works. If you have wood and the fibers are running this particular way, you're going to want to grab this and maybe pull it this way, or you see people ringing it around in circles and absolutely everything else. That's not how the fibers work. So a great trick to do is just to work against the fibers. So if you can see here that there is a Y section here or a V section here, and you want to pull this branch that way using your love, Gaelic for Gaelic for hands. So you simply take it here and you pull backwards. You take it here and you pull backwards. And if anybody has ever seen my fire gathering videos, this is also a fantastic way of gathering fire material. This is pretty greenish. It works even better on green branches. You can collect your kindling really fast. But all of a sudden now, I have stripped my stick of all those materials and I haven't had to take my knife out of my pocket at all. So we'll move swiftly into it because now we want to start doing a bit of carving. And the great thing about mastering the basic techniques of knife safety and knife techniques is that it makes any knife look good. If anybody out there watches people like Morse Kahansky and some of the great teachers like Dave Westcott and everybody else, they can make any knife look good. You could give them a machete and they could achieve what they want to achieve outdoors, but it's because they have mastered the basic knife skills, and once you master those basic knife skills, you can use any knife and look like a pro. So first of all, if we are working in groups, and we are out and about in a classroom situation, the first thing you want to do, or you're teaching your kids, the first thing you want to do is come up with a safe word. Easy boys in the back. But you want to come up with a safe word, so it means tools down. I like to use tools down. It's something everybody can understand, has a lot of hard letters in it, like T's. And that way, if you're working in a group, and someone manages to nick a finger and something like that, the last thing you want to cause is panic. So by simply saying tools down, people put their tools on the ground and you can then address the situation that has arose. Also, one of the first things to remember, and as a guy who works, I am a product developer for a large knife company, some of you may know them, the Heli Knives in Norway. I demonstrate a lot of knives at shows. So I want you to remember, if you take nothing else away from this video, that a falling knife has no handle. What do you mean by that, Joe? Well, that basically means that if you are working with a knife, and I see this all the time, and you go to let it fall, you just step back and you let it fall. A falling knife should have no handle. Now, when we are not using our knives, they remain in the sheath. Like I said, I'm always looking for these pro woodcrafters and bushcrafters working on projects. The less they use their tools, the more pro they are to me, because they're looking after their love. It stays in the sheath when we're walking around camp. It stays in the sheath when we're finished working. Even like me, if it's not on the belt, it stays in the sheath if it is on the ground. When you want to hand a knife to somebody, there's two schools of thought in this. And one thing that I've learned from being in Scandinavia compared to other countries, in most countries, you hand a knife over like so. Someone comes along, they take the knife, you wait for them to say thank you. That's very, very important. They'll say thank you, or here, I got a hold of it. You can let go of it and they should take it away from you. And this protects your hand and the webbing should you need to do it. Now, in Scandinavia, the way to hand knives over is like so, where you take it like this, you open your hand, they say thank you, and the knife is free to move where you want. My preferred method is this particular one, just because it keeps all your digits, your important digits, out of the road. Now that the safety lecture when it comes to tool maintenance is out of the way, we want to sit down and we want to do a bit of carving. So one of the first things that we have to do is to look around our blood circle. I'm out here in a very open space and Ida is way over there behind the camera, so the chances of me shanking somebody is very, very small. But the blood circle is important because another thing that I look for in pros is how little the knife actually moves when you have it out in the woods. So one, you want to be touching it as little as possible or it'll make Jesus cry. Or two, that if you have it out, that it should be moving as little as possible so you don't stab somebody. And by the way, out there, if you're having a bit of a bad day, you count as somebody too. So the less movement you got, the better. First of all, you want to take your knife and extend it out as far as you can go. And just look around you, see what's going on. Is there anything you can swing into? Is there anybody who can walk by? Are you chatting to your favorite friend? And the reason for this is we all get a bit complacent at times, myself included. And you can, instead of doing the proper cut that you're supposed to be doing, you might hit a knot or whatever, put a bit of force into it, and all of a sudden you're into your friend. And you don't want to be in that situation. So the blood circle is kind of what it is, or I like to call it the social distancing circle. When I want a bit of peace, I can tell people that they need to be back from me when I'm using my knife. Next of all, and I would argue that this is probably the most important, overlooked, twitchy in the back, gives me precious moments, situation that happens with knives, and that is the blood triangle. What is that, Joe? Is that where boats go missing and pirate ships appear? No, it is the section between your legs. You should always be in a comfortable position when you're sitting down using knives. It helps with the biomechanics. And as always, the laziest person is the fastest way to do a job, and the techniques I'm going to show you are there to be, or are there to allow you to work for longer periods of time in the forest. Maybe you've got to process a lot of wood. You don't want to be burning calories and moving too much. So sitting down in a nice, comfortable posture where you can be relaxed is a place to start. But the most common thing that we see everywhere, and I'm sure everybody at home can agree with this, is the first thing people tend to do is they tend to sit up straight with their back and they'll work within the blood triangle. And I think you can see what I mean now. Please don't zoom in on my crotches. So you go from knee to knee up to your crotch and you stay out of this triangle, way out of this triangle. In fact, it is one of the no pass goals I have on my courses. You get one warning, second warning, I'm not having to deal with that trouble. Why, Joe? Well, because major arteries run through these parts of your legs. And if you cut them, there's nothing me, insurance, the Lord, or the flying spaghetti monster can do to save you. It's a very quick, very bad place to get cut. So working outside of here is just so important to do, even if you're on your knees. Now, Joe, I like sitting in there. What am I supposed to do? I like to sit down comfortably and sit around the fire and have a bit of relaxing. Not everybody has a beautiful, perfect chair like you're sitting on. Correctly so. So if you are sitting on a stump, we have taken our knife from the sheath. Now, how do knives work, Joe? Why am I even talking about this? Well, it's important to understand the mechanics. This knife is razor sharp. I like to keep it very sharp. And as you notice, I can press my thumb on it, no problem at all. You can even see the cute little reflex there for those out there who watch for those things, that I am actually pressing on the edge of this knife. It is not cutting me. But how knives work is by movement. Actually, if you look at a knife underneath a microscope, you will see that it's actually a lot like a saw. It just feels very fine. And the reason why that is because it tears the fibers of the woods as you go through a stroke. Anybody at home will notice that when you're cutting vegetables at home, for example, when you're doing these type of movements, they're the ones that cut the digits, but doing these type of movements and feeding the food into it are the ones that are going to cause you less problems. And that is exactly how knives in the woods work. We use a feeding hand and a working hand. So we'll dive straight into that. The edge should always be away. Remember, don't cut towards anybody and you are somebody. So get comfortable. And by instantly placing my elbows on my knees, I can now work outside my blood triangle, chip away and carve away. I can also, which I prefer to do, is come up and work off to the side. Takes a little of getting used to, but trust me, it's a very comfortable way to be in the woods. But most people will like to sit out here and do what they need to do, and that keeps you outside your blood triangle. Now, sticking on the subjects of biomechanics, for those who are absolute beginners out there or maybe find that they struggle with knives in the woods or their arms get tired, I hear you, I understand, that's what these techniques are for. You have over 50 muscles in your arm, give or take of where you start your arm from. So we'll start from the shoulder down to the fingertips. It's about 50, with most of the muscles being in your forearm, which is important for knife work, and in your hand, over 20 in your hand alone, flexor muscles, muscles that allow you to do this. Anybody out there that plays instruments knows exactly what I'm talking about, that you can't go from picking up an instrument, which is what a knife is, it's a tool, and go straight from ABCs to Beethoven's Fifth. It's going to take time and exercise, and that's the fun part, to get your flexor muscles to where you need to be for those fine carving movements. But everybody can start from the same place. So the first basic grip we're going to do is just a pull cut. A simple pull cut where the knife is going to remain stationary. We are going to use our feeder hand and we are going to act upon the working force of the edge. We're going to sit here nice and comfortably outside of our blood triangle, and we want to put a bit of a wedge on this stick. So we're going to get nice and locked in. Our arm is going to be straight. Your bigger muscles on most people are up here in your chest and up here in your shoulder. We can keep our arm locked and we can minimize the movement. Again, that's what I'm looking for in people who are pros with knives. I don't like to see knives flying and people using their tricep muscles and stuff like that. You're just going to tire yourself out, and until you learn how to control it, you're not going to be able to control it. I'm going to use the wood, because people tend to rotate their wrists. You see them getting locked in and out. The wood is where you need to be at it. You find the perfect spot and you use your shoulder and you push through it. Or you can use your shoulder on the other side of your body and you can pull through it, whichever you prefer. That's your simple push cut or pull cut that's outside your body. Now, when it comes to carving, you can see that I've created a square here. One of the biggest issues that people have, regardless if they're using biomechanic techniques, is carving gets harder. It's getting harder because you're trying to carve the flats. So these little peaks are where you want to be for your ease of carving. Super quick. And that gets your feather sticks and that moves you on further around. You can do it outside the front of your knee. I see a lot of people that like this one, but as you can see, there's a lot less knife going on. I'm a little bit more twisted. It's just a little bit uncomfortable for me because I'm a tall gent. Whichever works for you, I can totally understand. But this cut, again, we are now locking our shoulder, our elbow, and our wrist, and we are allowing the knife to do the work. And this is what actually gives us are beautiful feather stick cuts. You can move in a bit closer. You can use your knee as a guide if you want. And you can see you get these beautiful curls, stripping barks, making arrows. And this one technique allows you to build so much stuff in the woods, nice and safe. And as you can see, I'm not using every muscle in my arm, so I can do this for a very, very long period of time. And I do often have to do it, sometimes up to 100 feather sticks at a show. So I definitely know about saving those muscles. The next cut that I want to show you is one for when you're resting out here on your arms. I see an awful lot of people who like to make sausage sticks and sticks for around the fire, very basic technique and a way to do it. I would do it from up here on the knee or out here on the side, and you can see why I want this longer stick now as well. And if I'm making my sausage stick, I will just hawk off that material. Oh, I've hit a bit of a knot. Just twist it off there. Hawk off that material and get it done. There's your sausage stick. 4 or 5 cuts should all it should take, and the knife has not moved a single bit. But Joe, what if I want to just tip away, put a round point on a stick, or maybe carve in a notch? Totally get that. This is where your elbows come into play. We're outside the blood triangle, and this is a thumb cut. Again, you've got a feeder hand, so the knife should remain static. This time you're going to use your thumb for a bit of control, and that's the only muscle in my arm I'm going to be moving, bar these fingers in my hands. And you want to pull the stick back, push your thumb forward, and that gives you your control on your knife. So we want to carve an L7 notch or a 7 notch. We can just give it a little press like so with our thumb, nice and safe. Notice the edge, the working part of it is free. I'm not going to come into contact with anything. Just a tiny little roll, tiny little roll. We can take our thumb, use our fingers to pull the wood, and we push with our knife. Simple. And you can see you can even work back here on the working edge of the blade and just push in and just keep pushing and pulling with your feeding hand, and you can slowly get through a piece of wood fairly quick, nice and easy. Job's a good one. You can also then use that for just rounding off maybe the tip of a spike. Maybe you want to make a bow drill. Now it looks like this hand is moving, as you can see it's pushing through, not coming in, but that is just the force I'm using with my thumb, and the knife is releasing. But as you can see, these 2 very simple, very easy postures allows you to create your sausage sticks should you want to do that. It allows you to maybe straighten out an arrow, peel off some bark, make some feather sticks. One of the most used cuts that I use in the woods. The next one being that thumb cut for rounding off some bow drills, smoothing in some knots, trimming off some wood, and job's a good one. 2 very basic cuts that once mastered, I promise you will make your life outside in the woods easier. If you've enjoyed this video, I hope you have. I hope it's inspired you. It's a beautiful day here. I hope it's a beautiful day where you are. But go out there, sit on the porch, grab your favorite knife and practice and strengthen up those flexor muscles. When you get those muscles nice and strong, come back and join me in part 2 of this video, where I'll show you some intermediate cuts for those larger projects. As usual, you can leave some tips and tricks of your own in the comment section below, because as we believe at this channel, if you're the only expert in the room, you're in the wrong room. And as always, I will pin those nice and cool comments to the top, and everybody can share and everybody can learn. So get out there, have some fun, get a bit of practice. I'll see you in the woods or the next time on YouTube. Peace.